Hey guys, welcome back. It's me, Sahil Mahajan, and in today's video, we will be taking a look into the shared responsibility model. Now, this is a really important topic for the examination and also about cloud computing in general. Now, this shared responsibility model is pretty standard across all the cloud platforms, but we are going to talk about it in the perspective of AWS. So let's dive right into the video. So what is the shared responsibility model? So cloud security is a shared responsibility between AWS and you. So normally whenever folks do learn cloud computing, they assume that the cloud provider in this scenario, which is AWS, is responsible for the complete security of the cloud, or just the complete security, but that's not the case. Cloud security is actually a shared responsibility between AWS and you, or AWS and the organization. So it divides into two things. So AWS is responsible to secure the underlying infrastructure on which AWS services run. So you can think of underlying infrastructure as the physical data centers, the hardware, the networking, the power, the cooling. All of that is where AWS is responsible for. You are responsible for the data and the applications that you deploy in the cloud. So for example, you have any data that you are storing in the cloud, you are responsible to make sure that you use the best cloud security practices to secure your data and applications. Now let's dive a bit more into the shared responsibility model. Think of the shared responsibility model of renting an apartment. So wherein AWS is the landlord and you are the tenant, or the organization is the tenant. Now when we come to the responsibility of the landlord, they are responsible to maintain the security and also the maintenance of the infrastructure. So making sure that the main entrance of the building is secure, it is locked, it can only be accessed by authorized folks, making sure that the utilities work, so making sure that you do have electricity, water is working, the gas is working, everything works as expected, making sure to maintain the building. So if there's any physical damage or any physical maintenance that needs to be done, they work on that. They make sure that the elevators are working and so on. So that is the landlord's responsibility. Now, when it comes to the tenant's responsibility, now, of course, you are staying in the apartment complex, but you are responsible to lock your own door, right? Like, if you don't lock your own door and someone walks in and steals or a lot of stuff from your house, the landlord is not going to be responsible for that, because you are responsible for locking your own door. And again, you are also responsible for your possessions inside your apartment. So if a theft happens inside your apartment because of your door being open or your window being open, you are liable for it. But if your door was locked, your window was locked, and then the thief basically enters through the main door, then of course the building or the landlord would be responsible in that scenario. So that's the basic concept that we also follow in the cloud. So we have a saying that is security of the cloud, which is AWS responsibility. So AWS is responsible for security of the cloud, wherein they are responsible for protecting the hardware and the infrastructure, which comes into software, hardware and software. When we talk about hardware, they are responsible for protecting the physical servers, your storage drives, your networking cables, your power, your electricity, and much more. When it comes to software, and they are responsible to protect for the security of your storage, your database, your networking software, and your compute. Now if you use any managed service that is provided by AWS, we will of course dive into what are managed services, but that is where AWS would be responsible for the software. So let's take, for example, you go to AWS and say that, hey AWS, I would like to have a database. Now all the database software is the database infrastructure that is being set up is AWS's responsibility, but who can access that database, that is your responsibility. Now we have another sentence that is security in the cloud. So whenever we talk about security in the cloud, that is the customer's responsibility. So remember, when you are talking about security of the cloud, that is AWS responsibility. And when you talk about security in the cloud, that is the customer's responsibility. So these keywords are very important: security of the cloud and security in the cloud. When we talk about security in the cloud, customer's responsibility depends on the service they choose. Again, we do know that there are a lot of things. So if we talk about our example of an EC2 instance, which is an infrastructure as a service, so in this scenario, what happens is the customer is responsible for the operating system, any applications they install on the virtual machine. They are responsible for security patching, networking, and all of that stuff. Now, when it comes to AWS's responsibility, they are really only responsible for the physical hardware and the hypervisor through which the virtual machine is being created and serviced to you. Anything that you install on the virtual machine or how you configure the virtual machine, you are responsible for it. Customer data. You are always responsible for customer data. The customer is always responsible for any and all data that is available in AWS. So whether your data is encrypted, who can access it, or whatsoever, you are responsible for it. The customer is also responsible for access management. That is, who can access what on the cloud is again the customer's responsibility. It is not AWS's responsibility. Encryption is always the customer's responsibility, whether they want to encrypt their data in the cloud, how do they want to encrypt their data in the cloud, or they do not want to encrypt your data in the cloud. That again falls onto the customer's responsibility. And the customer's responsibility for operating systems and network is if you are using raw compute services like we spoke about EC2, then the customer is responsible for patching the OS, setting network configuration, setting access control, any applications that you install, and so on and so forth. Now, this is a very simple chart that we have over here, or a table that we have over here, which will explain you about different services and who is responsible for what. So we have our service type, that is IaaS, which is an example of an EC2, wherein AWS manages the physical hardware and the hypervisor. So they make sure that your physical servers are secure, they are working as expected, there are no damages, and they are replaced from time to time. And the customer is managed again manages the operating system, the applications that you install, networking, data, and also access management. So the customer is actually responsible for quite a lot of things when you use an EC2 instance. And if you use a managed service by AWS, we will dive in depth what are managed services. But if you use the managed service by AWS, for example, S3, S3 is just a storage solution provided by AWS. So here, AWS is actually responsible for more items. That they're responsible for the physical hardware. They're also responsible for the operating system and the platform that is provided to you. They're also responsible for the application logic that sits for the S3 service. Now, when it comes to the customer managed, the customer is always going to be responsible for data. Again, S3 is actually a storage service provided by AWS. So of course you are going to store data, right? So the customer is responsible for the data that is stored. The customer is responsible for any encryption they would like on that data. And the customer is also responsible for access management to that data. So this was basically about shared responsibility model. It is a very important concept that must be known. Always you will get 1 to 2 questions on the examination related to shared responsibility model. From an AWS standpoint or from any cloud computing standpoint, this is very important. So do make sure that you go over this video once again. If you guys did not understand about it, we will also be having a quiz related to this topic. So I hope you guys did like this video. If you did, please make sure to leave a like. Do subscribe and do comment if there are any other topics out there that you guys would like me to cover. I hope you guys have a great day ahead. See ya. Take care. Bye-bye.